Hello and welcome to Bounding Into Comics. My name is John Trent. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief at Bounding Into Comics. Today I got a story about an alleged Disney and Lucasfilm insider providing clarity to Jon Favreau's recent comments that The Mandalorian will tie into the Disney sequel trilogy. So before we get to this alleged Disney and Star Wars insider, I do want to provide some context regarding Favreau's comments about The Mandalorian tying directly into the Disney sequel trilogy. So he recently spoke to the Writers Guild of America, where he did seemingly confirm that The Mandalorian and its spin-off shows would lead to the sequel trilogy. The Mandalorian executive producer was specifically asked, did you have this arc planned out from the very beginning? Specifically, was the appearance of Luke Skywalker revealing that the story was essentially a few years after Return of the Jedi always a set idea from the jump, or something that you arrived on after working with the material? Favreau responded saying, no, the story unfolded as I wrote it. The Mandalorian inherits a great deal from existing Star Wars stories, and when I write, that context is always a consideration. It became clear that within the established continuity, certain things were likely to transpire. The Writers Guild of America then asked a follow-up, saying, are you concerned, having placed the story right in the midst of the saga, with the latest films having revealed Skywalker's future, that you're at all penned in narratively? Favreau answered, we have a tremendous amount of freedom afforded to us because of the gap in time between the films. Dave Filoni and I are in constant discussion regarding how each story choice is impacted by and would impact existing Star Wars material. His comments echo what he has said in the past. Back in September 2019, before The Mandalorian even aired, he detailed that the show would lead to the rise of the First Order. He said, also, what could happen in the 30 years between celebrating the defeat of the Empire and then the First Order? You come in on episode 7. The First Order are not just starting out, they're pretty far along. So somehow things weren't necessarily managed as well as they could have been if the galaxy ended up in hot water again like that. Back in October 2018, he posted a short synopsis for The Mandalorian to Instagram. It reads, after the stories of Jango and Boba Fett, another warrior emerges in the Star Wars universe. The Mandalorian is set after the fall of the Empire and before the emergence of the First Order. We follow the travails of a lone gunfighter in the outer reaches of the galaxy, far from the authority of the New Republic. On top of this, Star Wars released an official timeline in January 2021 that places The Mandalorian in front of the Disney sequel trilogy movies. As you can see, The Mandalorian is part of the New Republic era. It specifically flows into the Rise of the First Order era that contains the animated Star Wars Resistance show and the sequel trilogy films. Not to mention, in The Mandalorian Chapter 12, The Siege, a failed Imperial experiment involving what sounds like Grogu and blood transfusions, looks very similar to the Snoke clones seen in The Rise of Skywalker at the Emperor's base on Exegol. Nevertheless, an alleged Disney insider claims to provide clarity on Favreau's comments. This alleged insider provided their information to YouTuber Doomcock, who recently shared their comments in a recent video. The alleged insider states, well, Favreau wasn't lying. It all ends with the sequel trilogy, but that doesn't mean the current version of the sequel trilogy. Look, I understand you gentlemen don't live and work in this town. Favreau has to play the game. For all of Kathleen Kennedy's faults, she knows everyone and is a powerful player in Hollywood. Add to that, she doesn't particularly care for Favreau. He has to walk a fine line. The truth of the matter is Kathleen Kennedy and her people didn't think that Luke's return would be as big of a deal as it turned out to be. The fact that it did hit as big as it did scared Kennedy, and she's doing all she can to put a stop to this now before it goes any further. Later in the video, Doomcock relayed another message from the source. They said, all of you are going to have just have faith. There is a plan in place, and the fate of not only Star Wars, but also Marvel is riding on this plan. I can't give any details on this at the moment, not while the pieces are still on the board. We will have to let this play out, but I assure you I will inform you when the time is right, no matter how good or bad it may be. Doomcock would also state in the video, quote, all the messages that I'm getting from my sources seem to point in the same direction, that they are going to fix this mess. He specifically points to Favreau's comments about entertaining the fans. In the interview with the Writers Guild of America, Favreau stated, there's something really cool about putting a small sample of what you're doing out there to your core audience and seeing if they are sparked to it. Because at the end of the day, it's a conversation with that audience, and those fans are who you're speaking to. And if you're doing something that they're not feeling, you're not doing your job right. Doomcock commented on this, saying, and that is the principle of without respect, we reject. Jon Favreau reveals his philosophy in that quote, "Jon Favreau is one of us. Jon Favreau is taking into account what fans are saying. He is hearing us, and they are planning accordingly." He goes on to say, "I don't know how you can listen to that quote and not be encouraged that Jon Favreau at least is listening to fans, and we are saying we want the sequel trilogy erased. We want our Star Wars universe back, and I have faith, at least at this juncture, from my sources, from what Favreau himself has said, that Star Wars is moving in a direction that fans can live with again." However, he does add the caveat, "Now, it's always possible that we are all being played, that they are stringing us along, and that this is all just going to tie into the sequel trilogy. But if that's the case, Star Wars will be dead forever, and fans will abandon them in droves." I don't think we're being played or strung along. I think the evidence is there, as I documented earlier in the video. It is leading to the sequel trilogy. I do think, though, that Favreau is working with what he can work with. I am encouraged by that line that he gave to the Writers Guild of America, that he does care about what the fans are saying and how they're reacting. And we've seen him say this on multiple times. I think that's actually something that separates himself from what we usually see from Lucasfilm. And I do think that's kind of his personal philosophy. At least that's what it appears like in these interviews that we've seen him give. But he's also penned in within the overarching company that is Lucasfilm. While he says he has a lot of freedom, he also notes that that freedom is still constrained by the movies that come before and then the movies that come after. He specifically says that. He says, "We have a tremendous amount of freedom afforded to us because of the gap in time between the films." It takes place in between The Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. So and then the sequel trilogy that takes place after The Force Awakens. There's no other films that I know of that he could be talking about. I mean, I think that's pretty clear when he says the gap in between the films, that The Mandalorian is leading into the sequel trilogy. So I don't think we're getting played. I think the evidence is there. They're showing it in the show. We get these like Snoke-looking clones just here in season 2 of The Mandalorian. Favreau's made multiple statements saying that it's leading up to the First Order, which was introduced in the sequel trilogy. So I don't think they're playing coy or stringing us along. It's all there, and they're being rarely upfront about it. He's telling you in multiple interviews that that's what's going to happen. So I don't think they're actually stringing us along, but I do think that he is taking a different approach to how he treats the fans and the type of storytelling he wants to tell with the fans. That being said, I think he still has a lot of room to improve, and I think The Mandalorian is still a subpar Star Wars effort, and so I do hope that he is listening to fans, and I think he is. I mean, they got rid of the fob, and that was like probably one of my biggest complaints from the first season, so we did see them kind of just erase that from season 2, so we'll see what happens, and then they've kind of gotten rid of the whole, or at least they're putting a pause on the whole Mandalorian story and going into with Boba Fett, which kind of looks like what I thought The Mandalorian was going to be about, when he was telling us that it was going to be this lone gunfighter in the outer reaches of the galaxy, far from the authority of the New Republic. That's not what we got in The Mandalorian really whatsoever. We got a guy who's basically a pawn of the New Republic and is working for them, especially in season 2. So let me know what you think. Let me leave a comment in the comment section below. My name is Jon Trent, and you've been watching Bounding into Comics. I'll have another video for you tomorrow.